Welcome to Carl DeGregorio's Death Session 72. 72, don't have a good one on that one. Except I think that's a pretty good year for movies. I'm glad I picked up on that just as we speak. If I am not mistaken, that is The Godfather is 72. I think also the same year that Deliverance lost the Oscar to The Godfather. What a year to make a great film. A lot of people say 75. I think I just recently watched a documentary about 75 being the last great year of Hollywood, the new Hollywood that sort of went from 69 to 75. But so we're on 72. I'm doing this a day. I don't usually do this, but if this sort of starts to take shape the way I think it could, there'll be multiple drops per week, hopefully. And maybe when things are on my spirit or on my heart or on my mind, this may be the place to sort of come to for some kind of public clarity. Again, this is a very odd endeavor, not by cultural standards, but by my own standards, by the standards of historical reference, and who knows, I don't know how long the ruins and the artifacts will exist after our time, but will they understand the idea of public facing confessionals, or will they, or vlogs, or online journals, or even essayists and reading, and once the things go past literature, past, when they say people are post-literate, I don't think that means that they don't read. I think they mean that there are so many fangled ways to communicate, and if people have their druthers, and if things go the way a lot of Silicon Valley thinks it will, like there will be telepathic forms of communication, and so that would be post-literate. I think the assumption would be that we already read. And that's my big hang up about not so much, robots and stuff like that. It's just like that. Again, I guess this has always been the lament of education and what it actually is for. Did I need to know all the state capitals? Probably not. What was that a test of? Probably the ability to regurgitate. I don't know them any longer. And then, of course, the students sort of push back on algebra or any of these things was why, if I'm not going to use it to get a job, then why learn it? And then the teacher hopefully would be adept enough to explain that learning for the sake of learning is what is the point. But what happens is the cynical nature of our culture these days is might is right, or followers or clout is right, and even this humbly presented and humbly attended, if you will, is an attempt to enter that sphere, and I can't be lofty above it if I'm going to be participating in it. But the backlash toward people who did study, and the insult of book smart versus street smart, and now the street smart has become online smart. And I am in that Generation X that is sort of always straddled the old and the new, and is young enough to have to adapt because of it's sort of a seam. It's a generational seam where things were in flux. Now, I forget where I heard this online. Somebody's saying that if you look at the interiors of people's homes outside of technology and a flat screen TV and a maybe a Bluetooth speaker and no big stereos, how would you know how much different would it have been from the 70s? And I had a theory for a while that the 70s were the first introduction sort of not the first, but like where technology was starting to be courted and or presented in the cheapening of consumer electronics and things like that. So if you grew up in the 70s and 80s, while it wasn't yet digital, computers, chips, electronics, Walkmans, that is the precursor in terms of the consumer, right? We were chasing after building record collections on tapes. I was the cliches online or the memes about how we had to listen to the radio to record a favorite song on the radio, and I did that, of course. But that idea that there was consumer pressure probably applied by kids and the cartoons and the sort of growing preponderance of media in the 70s and 80s was that you had to have stuff. And so maybe that's always been the case, but I can't imagine the pressure my parents felt. They had kind of gotten through dealing with their first three kids, and then I came around 13 years later, and I was in a different generation, even though it's the same generation in my family, obviously. But I was pressuring them for things like cassettes, and I needed a Walkman, and I can't imagine what it's like today, because the pressure today is the iPhone and having to cough up $1,000. How much do you have to spend to keep 4 kids in iPhones and stuff like that? Maybe it's cheaper. I don't know. I wouldn't know, because I don't have the kids. But all I'm saying is that at least as far as I interact with technology, it's from more of a consumer base. And so, but when I got whenever I thought I found my calling, when the light got turned on outside of the influence of school and family, I guess it happened at school, but it was a lot of things I did. When the theater came calling to me, that is always and ever will be outside of the mainstream. And even theater is affected by technology. But the beauty of theater is that it exists in a live plane, and it exists in the plane of a happening, and it exists in I don't even know if analog is the right word. Human, a good voice, memorized text, something written, scripts passed out, dance steps learned, choreography, the blocking. Having to be in the same place at the same time to see it. Now, what has shifted is that notion of being someplace forced to watch something at a specified time is relegated to live performance and sports. And I think, it was, all I'm saying is that I was living in a modern world and then fell in love with a ancient art form that is now even further away from the trend, further away from the things that move the needle culturally and or financially, really, because that's the generator of all this stuff, right? Is capitalism and how things can get monetized. I don't even know I guess now where that monetization issue for theater comes to play is that Broadway is, a huge ticket. It's a $400 entry just for one seat, and I'm sure even more, right? And so we learn that we are, they have a reaction to it. And then there's the laments about, you're not going to see Arthur Miller type. You'll see Arthur Miller with a revival. You'll see him with movie stars playing Willie Loman. I think there's a new one coming out. They just did one with Wendell Pierce, but that actress, I forget her first name, and I don't want to just say her last name because of saying it without the first name is is a slur, but she was on The White Lotus and The Gilded Age, and now she was saying that I now get to be on Broadway because I've worked on television enough, and that's sort of the inverse of maybe how it used to be. And who knows? They've always had splashy casting to get people in the seats, but now I guess it's almost 100%. But what I'm saying is that there's no longer the incubator for the next Arthur Miller or Sam Shepard or August Wilson, And so we wonder. And I don't really dabble in theater any longer. And I don't know that my foray in stand-up is considered theater. It's a whole subset of a different spoken word live performance. And that's why I wanted to do a one-man show, because I wanted to use the skills I'd acquired doing stand-up in bars and clubs. I wanted to get back to the theater where, at very least, I'm sure it's an unruly crowd. I've seen clips of people losing their shit at intermission and things like that. But I know the etiquette of the theater, the reverence for the performer is just a little different. And I'm not saying I want to manipulate that because of a lack of confidence in my abilities. I just you want to have an audience that is at very least contented to sit there. And in a way, I think why the rise of stand-up, because that's a live experience just like theater, I think the rise of it is that we are clamoring and craving what we don't get with Netflix, which is I can pause this joker and come right back to it. There is no having to make appointments for stuff. And so to have the live experience is we should be trying to look on the bright side that is a good sign. And hopefully, soon I'll be able to manipulate or manifest that, in my life with presenting something, or maybe getting back to the theater. I don't know. It's not a very it's a very hard way to make a living. In fact, it's an impossibility. So except for the Broadway singing and dancing and stuff. So it's all starting to become that frightening prospect of what shall we do, or what shall I do. And I have to figure it out like everybody else does. I want to shout out a great film. We are in award season, and I get to vote on the SAG Awards, which I think are called the Actor Awards. And so all the performances and stunts, I think, are the way they seek the nominations. And so now we have the screeners, which are now they're all digital, going back to that. And so I got to watch Hamnet, which is my first instinct was I can't wait to see it, right? But then at the prospect of it, I thought it could wind up being like homework, these highly reverential and period pieces. They I know they're supposed to appeal to me, but when push comes to shove and I have to sit there and watch something, I never made it through the Denzel Washington version of the Coen brother Macbeth, or the Scottish play, knock on wood. I never got through it, as much as I would like to clamor for my love for Shakespeare. And that one, the Scottish play's got some of the best speeches, the ones that really resonate and almost sound like just punchy dialogue from that far back. But I'm speaking about Hamnet, which had all the markers of something that I knew I was gonna academically supposed to like. And if I could get through it, I would pat myself on the back. But as I watched it, I was blown away, to be honest with you. And Chloe Zhao, the director, I just can't even put into words what about it took me by surprise, took me in, kept me riveted. And cameras are better, so that's the technology, but what you place in front of the camera and what you say in front of the camera and what story you decide to enliven in front of the camera, that's still pretty old school. And in the hands of someone like Chloe Zhao, that was a feat in and of itself, and it was beautiful. It was one of the rare films of the day that I paused not, and that I just did take in the shots. You know, there was so much green and so much moisture. You know, it was English countryside, and I knew as little about it as I could, other than I think it referred to, you know, I guess they say in the preamble that Hamnet and Hamlet are interchangeable in the folios, and I don't know if that was a typeset thing or a pronunciation thing, but Hamnet and Hamlet are very much the same, and I don't know if that was the way to make it fiction for William Shakespeare when he was, you know, what the story that is told, and it's based on a novel, so I don't know how factual it is, but it was based on a sort of a reference to his son, and all of this stuff. And I believe this is the best way to enliven a story, enliven history, enliven a tale. I learned so much, and I was sitting there going, you know, is this the 1500s, and you know, London and him on the wharf and Stratford, all these things were just flooding my mind. And you know, it may not be for everybody, but this was for me. And it was almost a beacon, a freaking trumpet blast, a bugle blast to assemble, because of the as far as the English language is concerned, and as far as performance of theater. I guess you could go as far back as the Greeks, but Shakespeare is really where it's at for the modern thespian, even though thespian is all the way back. But it was so moving to me, and I don't want to, there's nothing really to spoil other than that it makes you think about the process. That's one of the few great examples of showing how a writer cooks his material. You know, you hear there's scenes where William Shakespeare's writing with, you know, a quill and ink at night, and he's you know, he's working on speeches from Romeo and Juliet, and you think that's where it could go, or, you know, and I would have been content to watch the story behind each play, but this one was a heavier thing, and the actress is amazing, and everybody's amazing, and the kids are amazing, and I know I'm using crummy adjectives, but I will say it moved me to a way. It moved me so much that I would have preferred to have been alone. But I was watching with my girlfriend, and she, again, like the Bob Dylan movie, she was consoling me. But this at a whole other level. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't understand the story point, the plot point. Where the emotion, I could feel it. I at one point I was disconnecting, and I didn't know. I was kind of like, sometimes you want to watch, you go to a certain type of weeper, a three hanky movie. You kind of know you're going there for the cathartic expression of emotion. You kind of want it, and I could kind of see where it was coming, but it didn't come where I thought it was going to, and then it walloped me in a whole other section. And it walloped me hard. And And one thing, technology and storytelling, which is beyond technology. Technology is a tool, you know. You don't, and that's where we're at with technology. Is we're worshiping the paintbrush and not the painter. We're worshiping the hammer and the chisel and not the hands and the mind and the artist that knows what to chip away. And, you know, in this case, you know, the technology and the storytelling is a time travel. And that's one thing that art does do. So when you say time is not linear, that's part of what I understand. I don't know if I'm understanding when people say time not linear in the quantum way, but with the technology and with the amazing amount of craft in the filmmaking, they take me back to what it looks like at the Globe Theater. And then they put the audience there. And then you see the thing that I trained to do, the thing I fell in love with. You see that being done and being properly viewed and properly respected. And then the story blowing people's minds and the reaction. And then the chuckle where you see like the idea of what they had for special effects. My girl and I chuckle. I'm like, that's what they think is like fancy dancing, because there's an ooh and an ah at a certain type of stagecraft that was the best they could do to sort of do a scene change or a swipe or any of these things. And so why I really recommend this and why it really turned me on is because if it got me back to, you know, respecting the artist, not the hardware. Do you know what I'm saying? And what advertising will do is this film made by the iPhone. Okay, cool. Well, what about the dude holding it? Because if the film itself is cool, it's because the choice of the artist put the lens and yes, I can't solder a circuit board. I can't code. So I understand that respect must be paid to each craftsman and artisan along the way, which is why acting in film and television and even in theater is collaborative. So everybody has their role to play. But if the priority and the reward system rewards the wrong thing, and that's what the big fear about AI for an artist isn't. It is that they'll be replaced, but it's that we're trying to then put the technology before the fuel for the creativity to make the technology even worth having, you know. And so in Hamnet, just having the ability to tell this story and use technology, but to go back in time and to find those locations and tell that story. And I got to read more about it, but it was such a love letter to the theater, but also gave you a glimpse in what might have motivated the man. You know, we know what we know about Shakespeare. We know very little, I suppose. We don't, you know, I don't know. This was a novel, I suppose. And the beauty of using Shakespeare's, I guess, is public domain, so you can use the text and the speech. And then there's an interpretation by the actor. There's an interpretation in, like, worlds within worlds. So, however, and then they have William Shakespeare playing the ghost. And then you understand that to transmute as an artist into your art and make it personal, you make editorial decisions that are not autobiographical in terms of memoir, right? It's not a docudrama about what he went through with his son. It is recasting people, naming a character, talking about grief, talking about revenge, talking about being, you know, stuck, not knowing how to act, what steps to take, loyalty, friendship, all these things are in that story, but yet the wife first sees it as a betrayal, that he would spill his guts, so to speak, for the public, and then yet she is bowled over by his artistry and by the power of the communal experience of that play. And It's so damn good, and it almost and any good art, any good movie, and we've heard this many times, and I hope, you can't live like this every minute of every day because of traffic, because of bills, and because of a lot of reasons, right? You can't, but a great film leaves you in that haze afterward, and maybe it lasts till you get home, or maybe it lasts a week, or maybe it lasts as long as it can when you're a kid, but the ethos that is presented, or the emotion that is stirred, or the notion that is stirred for the 20 minutes after, you would be able to face a fear because of what you just got emboldened with. And hopefully, and that's why I still respond to art on a massive scale, is because I'm trying to keep that hope alive, keep that spirit alive, live as if, it doesn't mean I want to live in a fantasy world. It means I want to live like a value. I want to live an ethic. I want to live a principle. And that is what religion and art, and certainly what theater that came from a religious sort of ritual. The Mass is literally a play. It's the same damn script every time in the Catholic Church, right? The Mass is literally a performance of the rite, R-I-T-E, and so theater comes from that, and that's what I respond to. And this Hamnet really reminded me of that, and it's just the perfect film for the day because it does have these elements. It has, if you have to see any of the politics of today in it, you will. A strong-willed woman, a rebel woman, a man needs to provide, but he's not a cookie-cutter dude, and he's frustrated, and it's got woe, and it's got all of that. And so it's got that's the modern overhang, and then the time travel that art can do it, and then the technology of the filmmaking, it literally can transport you, and that's certainly what it did. So my hat is off, and as soon as it was over, I said to my girl, I said, what's going to be better than that, and I don't know if it, in the competitive sense, and that's the other absurdity and sort of vulgarity of the award seasons, is that apples and oranges are competing for, the best fruit, and they're different, but for my money, that's the front runner in my head, but with the SAG Awards, they are for performance. And so you don't get to vote on the script. You don't get to vote on the director or the source material or the adaptation aspect. For me, this one is it. Song Sung Blue is very good too, and very life-affirming in a very different way. And there's some performances in there are fantastic. So Hamnet, though, is almost, for me, was a clarion call. It was a bat signal for all the strivers to still strive, to find a way to, it is such an illusion, ultimately, right? It is such an illusion to be that, quote unquote, honest in fiction, and that's the... A little tidbit about me is there was a forensics, is what we call. I guess it was speech and debate in certain high schools, but it was called forensics in my high school. And you would take monologues and you would do scenes, and you go travel around the state and you would compete, and there would be judges sitting in these rooms, and you'd go on a weekend, you'd go to some other high school, you'd be, that's how you know you love what you do, when you would spend a weekend, a Saturday in another high school, in a classroom with people watching, and awards were handed out, and I won an award for my monologue, which was from Hamlet, and that was the dream for me for many years. It was basically a pretentious notion, but I would always say that I want to play Hamlet someday, and now I would probably be more in line with Claudius and Polonius at this point, but the speech that I did wasn't the one in the play. But as I am facing an uncertainty in my life, it dawned on me that that's what Hamlet is. People will say, is he insane or is he not? Did he see the ghost or did he not? It's a play about revenge. It's the beauty of the interpretive aspect of it, and the depth of it is it can be interpreted many ways. But it's certainly about a guy who's stuck, right? And I feel not so much stuck, but that he has to make and in the speech I did that I won awards for, he talks about it. He talks about he has a cue for action, a cue for passion. He knows what he has a very distinct do or don't, and he can't, quote unquote, pull the trigger. This is before gunpowder, I think, but and he maybe makes the wrong decision, and it's the tragedy of Hamlet, right? So he acts, and he it is just it's like the timing. It's like it feels like it's sent through one of those pneumatic tubes they used to have in drive-through banks. It's like, watch this movie, Carl. Think about this, Carl. And I'd like to see it that way. I know it's random, but if you can't glean a message, you're bound to miss it. So I'm gonna lean into it. But the idea of like he's fighting, and I can't remember the passage where it talks about, but it's, oh, what a rogue and peasant slave am I. So he's beating this shit out of himself. Is it not monstrous that this player here? So he's referring to, he comes home, his uncle is sleeping with his mother, right? That's the whole gist of Hamlet. And they have the rich people, Prince of Denmark, they entertain themselves, so they have some actors and they do a play, and he's watching this play and he sees this actor like doing all these emoting, and it's all for entertainment, and it really irks him because he's got a real issue, right? So he says, is it not monstrous that this player here, this actor, but in a fiction, in a dream of passion, could force his soul so to his own conceit, so he can act all these emotions, that from his visage wand, tears in his eyes, distraction in his aspect, all the things an actor does for reality of emotion, he's doing it for Hecuba, which is a character in the play. What's Hecuba to he, or he to Hecuba, that he should weep for her? What would he do if he had the motive and cue for passion that I have, motherfucker? And that's how and the beauty of the Hamlet is, I think, rather than like if I were a high school teacher, you have to teach them the play, but this would be the movie to show, I think, because it would show the derivation, how it can be interpreted, how it could mean something to a mom, a dad, you, the kid. Like it would show, and what they often leave out in English class when they teach Shakespeare is that these aren't books, they're scripts. They were scripts. And a script is the same thing as a playbook in a football game. You hand them out to everybody, and it's yours for rehearsal to then get into your head and to mark up and to interpret and to say it your way and to go wherever the director tells you to go, the coach. And they're not books to be sort of pondered. They're to be thrown in your face up on stage to then make you feel, make you think, make you want to change, make you want to understand somebody better, make you want to hate the historical figure that you always have hated, or maybe see that person was flawed and that blah, 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 all the things that great art can do. And, how it can change a life, which is what it did for me. And my Hamlet moment is right now. What will I do with this motive and cue for passion? What am I going to do with the rest of my life? It's the call for everyone, but for me, through this movie, what am I gonna do? And the first thing my girl said, why don't you do a play? Why don't you get back into a theater? And all this stuff that I almost took. I amputated it. Do you understand how that? That's the analogy. It feels like an amputation. I made certain decisions in my life that took me away from that, or I put paying bills as the only value I could aspire to. I set my sights too low because, if you can't see a light going on, just me thinking about it, I want to do this monologue for you. I won't, but I want to, I want to say those words, and, I want to remember the artist, not the instrument, Stradivarius is the red violin. It's the beautiful instrument, but it's a fucking balsa wood without the player. And I love how they call it the player in the movie, and that's what it is, and that's what they say in Shakespeare. That's what Hamlet says. Well, this player here, player, not actor, player, and they weren't trying to maybe get awards, and then you notice that like Shakespeare played some of the roles probably out of necessity, and all of that crafting and all of that he got popular in his time, like he was something else, and anyway, it's making me think, that's all, and we'll work it out, and you hope you're not a tragic figure like Hamlet, because it doesn't work out for him. He finally does make a decision and he ruins lives. I don't want to ruin my life, you know what I mean? And I want to stay on the good foot, on the positive foot. One of the practices I want to put back in was the writing down 3 things you're grateful for every day in my calendar. I got away from that, and then lo and behold, I started feeling put upon. So, I have some of the tools and I know what they are. I just have to stick with the program, as they say. But please see Hamnet. I don't know how I would get you through it if that is not your cup of tea. But if it's even a tiny curiosity, I would say see it and be ready. And I won't spoil it, but it's just, I couldn't believe how they took it out of the realm of intellectual and just made it pure emotion. It was beautiful. So, God bless those filmmakers, those actors. And if I could vote twice, I would. And I want to meet that director someday because she gets it. She gets it, man. Sticking with the program of the death session moving forward is the duality of talking week to week, but also going through my playlist. Now, when it's my all-time playlist, it's not these are my all-time favorite songs. I should remind myself that they're just a compilation of everything I've clicked on when I'm trying to jam out, or when I listen to playlists that I make for driving, or mostly for like working out and cardio. So this week, the third song on my all-time playlist is One More Time. Hold on, let me check. I see. This is why you gotta maybe have a fucking cue card here. Yeah, One More Time by Daft Punk, which is I think they're a French outfit. I love this. This is when I turn into a 1940s music executive like Sinatra guy. This is a French outfit. They're a duo from France. They're an EDM, electronic dance music. I think they started in the 90s, and they wear the helmets, and you don't know who the F they are. And One More Time is one of their club bangers, and it's just a very motivating song. So I've listened to that on my walks, on my cardio days, and I think where the sort of first exposure to them, and thank God for Shazam. So back to the technology. I worship the tool. I wouldn't use it for anything other than but the Shazam technology is an incredible thing. It's probably, I was aware of them. They were big hits, but it's not even of course I'd heard the song, but then sometimes you need to know the artist. And it wasn't an actual Shazam. I know I Shazammed another song of theirs. They have hits, and they were prominent in I Will Destroy You. They are prominent in this HBO British series from Michaela Cole, I think is her name. She there's a prominent use of a Daft Punk song, and what I like about Daft Punk, and what I like One More Try, what I like about a lot of this music that I Shazam is the international vibe that it gives off. It makes me feel worldly, and I've been lucky enough to live in 2 world cities, meaning New York City and LA, but I've never lived in Europe or any other sort of world city, and some of that music is aspirational and what I call, sort of trying to manifest. I've purchased some good luggage, and I renewed, I had a passport that I had to renew before I ever used, because I just couldn't bring myself out. I wasn't able to get out of the country. And on my second passport, I finally did. But so yeah, Daft Punk, there's not a lot to say about the content of the song. It's just a club banger. You know the song. It's got that ding, 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 ding. It's just a jam. One More Try, Daft Punk. One More Time. Sorry, I keep saying One More Try, which is a One More Time. One More Try is Johnny O. It's a freestyle song, or Greg LeMond. Not Greg LeMond. That's George LeMond. One More Try. Timmy T does One More Try. One More Time is the song I'm talking about. So shout out to Timmy T, and shout out to Daft Punk. They don't really need the help, but One More Time is the track I'm referring on my countdown. I'll put that in the link, and go see Hamnet, and feeling like I gotta do something to make something happen. So maybe you too. All right, peace.